Hey guys, and welcome to this video. In this video, I want to talk to you today about barista etiquette. So first on the list, we're going to be talking about milk, in particular banging the milk jug on the bench. Now, no matter how advanced you are, there will be times where, maybe through a moment of inattention, you accidentally get a few too many bubbles in your milk. And this way you can get rid of them by just lightly tapping your jug on the bench. You shouldn't really have too many bubbles in your milk. And if you only have a few bubbles, it's only going to take a light tap. But if you require to tap your jug on the bench 10, 15 times to get rid of all the bubbles, it kind of means that there might be more of a problem with your technique of steaming. This should be more of a tool that you can use occasionally if you end up getting too many bubbles on a certain batch of milk that you're steaming up. It shouldn't be too much of a regular occurrence. It will occasionally when you start to learn as a new barista, but when you get more technique and when you learn how to steam your milk up more consistently, it should be less of a problem. So learn how to do it, but don't rely on it. Just use it as a tool when required. Here's a bit of a demonstration for what it would sound like for a customer listening to that. Now we come to the topic of hand washing. So being a barista, you're actually in a food preparation area. So it's your responsibility to keep your hands nice and clean. If your hands start to get any grinds on them, so some coffee grinds, giving them a nice good wash with some soap is going to get rid of those coffee grinds. If you went out to the kitchen and you washed some dishes and you come back and your hands aren't visibly soiled, you'll be wanting to use some alcoholic sanitizer. And that just one pump of sanitizer, you'll be able to instantly sanitize your hands and get straight back into the action. But be very mindful that being a barista, people are always watching what you do. To be honest, a barista tends to get more visibly soiled hands than any other staff member does. The reason for this is because we deal a lot with coffee grinds. As soon as you go to clean that portafilter that you put the coffee grinds into, when you tap that out, you've got some grinds that you still need to wipe out. And when you wipe them out, there's a chance that you can get those coffee grinds onto your nice wet skin, and they're going to stain your skin a nice brown color. So it really looks like dirt. Many people that aren't really aware of that kind of think, oh my God, that looks disgusting. So you've really got to be mindful of your image. And through using a few strategies and techniques, I've managed to get my hand washing down to a minimum. So instead of making one coffee and having to wash my hands, I can make 20 coffees, 30 coffees before having to wash my hands. So my first suggestion is to keep your bench space always clean. So keep wiping it down with a chucks, get rid of all those coffee grinds, get rid of chocolate powder. The second thing that I would mention is when you do wipe out this portafilter, use some disposable towel if your hands are still wet. Because otherwise, if you do use a tea towel that's been used for this process and it's got quite a few coffee grinds on it already, the towel and the coffee grinds on the towel are going to go straight onto your fingers and get your hands instantly dirty, regardless of you just freshly washing your hands. So I did briefly mention about wiping the bench down. That's one of the first things that you can do to make your bench space nice and clean and to prevent extra mess from getting onto your hands. The second thing I'd like to say is that the drip tray that you can see where the cups sit on and receive the espresso shot, that can get very dirty, especially after making 5 or 6 coffees in a row. When you purge the group head, that's when you take out the portafilter and press one of the buttons. You get some coffee grinds and hot water onto the drip tray. And hot water and coffee grinds equals mess. In this instance, in this example here, I'm putting some chocolate powder onto the bench, which would simulate putting some chocolate powder on a cappuccino, and that's extra mess. When I knock these shot glasses over accidentally, I'm going to have espresso liquid all over the drip tray. So the first thing I'm going to do is literally just wipe that espresso mess off, because currently that's a lot of mess. The next step you have to think about in this situation is getting rid of the mess is good, But if you just leave your chucks as it is, it's going to end up with a lot of mess on it. And if you grab that chucks and wipe the bench, that mess is going to get in your hands. And your hands touch absolutely everything. So in this instance, I'm going to be grabbing a white mug with my hand, and you can already tell what that's going to look like when you take your hand off. You can wipe that down with a microfiber towel and get rid of the mess, but that's extra work. In this instance, I would be better off going straight to the sink and rinsing out that chucks and then washing my hands to get rid of any of that chocolate powder and espresso liquid that's gotten onto my hands, because my hands are going to transfer that mess to everything. One of the big parts of washing your hands is to dry your hands. Now, it will vary on person to person and time after drying your hands, but when I dry my hands, I'll need 3 or 4 pieces of paper towel to dry them. And when they're dry, they're not truly dry. There's still a little bit of moisture on my hands, and this is the danger time. If I went straight to touching some coffee grinds, those coffee grinds are going to go straight onto my skin, and my hands are going to be just as dirty as they were before. So you've got to use other techniques, like I mentioned, like using some paper towel to wipe out the portafilter, and that's going to reduce the chance of getting mess onto your slightly damp hands while they dry out. As you can see here, it takes a bit of effort to dry my hands. It takes 15, 20 seconds and 3 or 4 sheets of disposable paper. At this point, I would still get some coffee grinds on my fingers if I were to do that, as I'm demonstrating basically now. It doesn't take much effort. If my hands were dry, I wouldn't have many coffee grinds on them at all. Now we come to the topic of grinders. So no matter if it's a manual grinder or an automatic grinder or one of in between, each grinder can make a fair bit of noise, and through standard operation, it's unavoidable to some degree. However, there are some tips that you can follow to reduce the noise level of the grinder. I'm going to show you a couple of examples that are following right here. And the first one, I'm going to just rapidly flick the grinding lever to just get as many grinds through as possible. And in the second example, I'm just going to let the grinding chamber fill up first before dispensing it with a slower number of lever operations. As you would have been able to just see, there was no real difference in the length of time taken to get the grinds out, no matter which approach that you tried. So flicking the grinding lever less is going to result in less noise for your customers. Here are some examples of other things not to do. Always hold on to this and pull it. Never, never, never go. Don't go. You're going to wear out this grinder. I have embellished some of these operations, so you're unlikely to come across someone that extreme, but the reason why I do mention these examples are they are things that I have seen to some degree in the past, whether it was from myself or from previous people that I've worked with. So now we're going to be moving on to the next stage, and we're going to be talking about how our drinks degrade over time. If you've made a drink and you've got it waiting to be delivered, or you have taken over the customer and they haven't started drinking it, your drinks are going to degrade over time. So you've made them, say, 68 degrees, 70 degrees. The temperature of your drink is going to drop, obviously, over a period of time. But there are other factors involved, such as the froth on top of a latte or a cappuccino. That's going to collapse over time. And the long blacks and espressos that you might make, the crema that sits on top that gives that nice golden appearance, and that will just degrade over time. So as we're going to see over a time lapse, you're going to lose a lot of that crema. It's going to dissolve into the hot water beneath it. So this video, or this part of the video, actually fits into the concept that we're talking about, because we're going to be talking about the attitude of the barista towards delivering drinks. Because I've come across baristas in the past that refuse to run their own drinks, even if they're quiet and they've just made 3 coffees and they have nothing else to do now. They might just be standing around kind of talking, while the floor staff member might be working quite hard, taking a lot of orders, doing food. So you have to understand that your drinks haven't been finished at this point. They're finished when they get delivered to the customer and it's sitting in front of the customer. You can't just leave your drinks waiting to be delivered. So it's a bit of a team effort. Sometimes the floor staff is going to be really busy, so you're going to have to run your own drinks. Over a period of time, I'm currently doing a time lapse on these 3 drinks that I've made on the screen. And over a period of 5.5 minutes, you'll be able to see, firstly, the long black on the right there. It's losing that crema. It's starting to dissolve back into the hot water underneath. And the cappuccino in the middle there, the froth was a nice dome to begin with, but now it's sinking, especially where the chocolate powder is on half of the drink there. One of the reasons why I designed that drink with the chocolate on half of the froth there is to demonstrate how much it actually collapses with a little bit of weight on it as well. So over a period of 5 minutes, the long black, you can see even further degrading there. It's still okay to drink at any point in time, but the best time to drink a long black or an espresso is as quickly as possible to get that out to the customer, because they might not start drinking it. They might leave it there for a little bit to cool down. However, you need to give them the control to be able to drink it straight away.
This long black doesn't look the best. It's still got crema on top. However, it's going to be not as appetizing as if you'd had this fresh. It's still nice and hot. Now look at this espresso. This espresso still has crema. It hasn't broken through like that long black. However, you can see where the espresso line used to be for this drink. It has sunk a little bit. Now look at this. The froth has completely separated from the liquid. The chocolate has kind of collapsed the froth a bit more on the chocolate side here. It's sunk in. This used to be domed. However, now it's pretty much flat. So if we just pour this a tiny bit to the side, there will be a point where you can see that a little bit more. That liquid is completely separated.
Another important part of the barista's day is to be steaming up milk. To steam up milk, you need to use this steam wand. And this steam wand here, it needs to be wiped after every use. Considering that you use different types of milk, you have regular milk, soy milk, almond milk, a lot of other alternative milks, you need to properly and effectively be able to wipe the steam wand and purge the steam wand. Purging basically means just to turn on the steam valve, and that gets rid of anything inside the steam wand. But we have to also clean the outside. There are probably a few different ways to clean the outside. What we've found works best is a slightly wet microfiber towel. So you don't want it too wet where it makes your hands very wet, but you also don't want it too dry. Otherwise it just doesn't seem to pick up everything.
So this one is completely dry. This one is slightly wet, but not too wet. Try and wipe it with this. It works a little bit. However, if it's slightly wet to begin with, it just glides. It glides over this. It's not like kind of sticky. You can probably hear that squeaking, whereas this is wet.
So what happens when it's too wet? When it's too wet, your hand is going to be very, very wet like this. And when you go to wipe the steam wand, it's going to still work okay, but your palm, where you use to like wipe out the basket and stuff like that, it's going to have too much moisture. When you go to clear out a portafilter like that, you can see how dirty the hand gets instantly. So you don't want it too wet, but you don't want it too dry. To keep it at that right level of moisture, what you need to do is to put the microfiber towel at the back of the drip tray. So when you go to purge the steam wand, you're not going to get any steam or water onto the microfiber cloth. However, you can rapidly get moisture into your microfiber cloth if you have it around the nozzle there as I'm showing. It's only going to take 10 minutes for that to be so wet. So, the final topic that I want to cover that I hope gives you guys a bit more value is talking about takeaway cup etiquette. So, briefly, within the takeaway cups, you have two different structures, I guess you could call them. The first one is the single walled cup, the second one is the double walled cup. The double wall has that extra layer of insulation, so you're not going to feel the temperature as much from just grabbing it. However, if you use a single walled cup, you're going to feel that temperature so easily. Even if you're making a coffee for 68, 70 degrees, so it's designed to be drank straight away, you're going to feel that 60 degrees, 65 degrees as you pick up the cup. So if you do use single wall cups, the way that you grab them is important. So you can either just grab them and bear the pain, grit your teeth and hand it to the customer, but then they also have to do the same thing. In that case, there are a number of ways that we can get around it. So the first way is that we can use little cardboard sleeves. They just form a little ring around the cup that the customer can grab, and that provides the extra layer of insulation like it was a double wall cup to begin with. Another way that you can get around it is by putting it into a carry tray. And if you put it into a carry tray, the customer can just safely transport it to their office or wherever they're going to work or back home. And then they can put their coffee onto the bench and they can just leave it to cool down to an appropriate level, and they can just pick it up and drink it as required. But they don't have to walk for 5 minutes and hold it into the one hand. The other way that you can get around this is by simply double cupping your drink. So if you don't have a cardboard carry tray, if you don't have cardboard sleeves to go around the coffee, then an alternative might be just to simply put that coffee into another cup. When you transport it, some people grab it by the lid, and the lid that can be fine because when you put the lid on, it snaps on. It's got a fair bit of strength to it, so it's not, unless your cups aren't fitting quite well with the lids, that should give enough strength for you to carry it by the lid. That's not the problem. However, the problem is when people grab the lid at the wrong spot. So what I'm talking about is grabbing the mouthpiece part where the customer puts their mouth on. If you were to just take the drink over to the customer and you've had your fingers all over their mouthpiece, some customers might not really like that so much. So that's the main part that I wanted to get across. If you are going to carry by the lid, make sure that you don't touch the mouthpiece where people drink out of. The next option that you can do if the coffee is really hot is to simply grab the underneath area of the cup and just either balance it on your hand, or you can stretch your thumb and your pinky finger over the entire length of the cup. So your pinky finger is going to rest on top of the lid, and your thumb is going to provide all the supporting work on the bottom. This is because there's a safety lip, I'd call it a safety lip on the bottom of the cup, and that it has no direct contact with the hot contents of the drink. These are topics that I've come across over a decade of working in this industry. So I'd love it if you guys can give me some feedback. Let me know if there's anything else in regards to, say, barista etiquette in this video that you might have thought was quite important but I didn't cover. And I hope you've enjoyed.